Good evening, dear listener. Tonight, we open the pages of one of the most enchanting tales ever told. But before we begin, if these quiet stories bring you peace, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. I'd truly love to know where you're listening from and what hour of the night finds you here. Our little circle now stretches across oceans, bound by stories and calm. So dim the lights, let the air grow still, and let your mind wander gently with me into tonight's story. There was once a merchant named Laurent who staked his entire fortune on a fleet of ships, but lost them all at sea. Being a widower, he didn't have to take this news home to a wife. However, he had 6 children who had grown used to a life of relative privilege. When the debts were called in, and rumor spread that the family was penniless, most of them took the news hard. As days turned into weeks, and the ships didn't appear in the port, the merchant had to begin selling their fine furniture, their carriage, and even his daughter's jewelry and expensive dresses. They had to give up their richly appointed house and move to a cottage on the outskirts of town. Laurent was frequently away, visiting business acquaintances and trying to find partners who might invest and help him rebuild his business. While he traveled, his children, who were 3 boys and 3 girls, were left to keep the house on their own. Although they were practically adults, the 3 boys and the 2 oldest girls were largely useless when it came to practical skills. They had become quite accustomed to a life of study and idle luxury. The youngest daughter, whose name was Camille, was the most willing to take on the necessary household chores now that they were without servants. Perhaps it was her more impressionable age, or perhaps it was that she had a sweeter Morse temperament. Whatever the combination of factors, Camille did the best she could to learn the basics of running a household. Indeed, she was the only member of the family who was truly liked by the people in the village. Laurent's brood did not have many friends. To make their situation worse, the 5 oldest children also made no effort to adjust to their new lives. They did nothing to prove themselves capable or to endear themselves to the neighbors who might have helped them. Camille, however, sought advice from the villagers about unfamiliar skills such as baking, sewing, gardening, and keeping chickens. Their wariness turned to a genuine affection when they grew to appreciate her willingness to learn and to work hard. In this way, over time, she became the glue that held Laurent's household together, while the 5 older siblings struggled to accept their fate. Unable to change, Camille ensured that they had a tidy home and that there was food on the table. One day, when the family had been living this way for nearly 2 years, Laurent received word that one of his lost ships had appeared in the port, its cargo largely intact. The family rejoiced at this miraculous news, the older 5 siblings declaring that their lives among the villagers were finally at an end. The mill took pleasure in their happiness, but the news did not seem as important to her as it did to the others. She had come to love their small cottage, with its tidy garden and comforting aroma of baking bread. Although it would be a relief to see the rest of her family content, she was unsure as to whether she wanted to return to their former lives of idleness. She had become a person who liked being useful. In order to reclaim his property, Laurent had to travel to the port by horseback, and it would be a journey of a couple of days. Once there, he could arrange for the proper dispersal of his reclaimed wealth and hire a comfortable coach to bring him home. In anticipation of their improved fortunes, he asked each of his children what gift they would like to have from the city. The older siblings demanded finery. They asked for silk shoes with sparkling buckles, hats with elaborate trimmings, velvet capes, furs, and jewels. Only Camille was silent, seeming to think very hard about what her request would be. When her father turned to her and told her to speak up, she hesitated briefly. "In truth, Father, I have always dreamed of seeing a rose," she said. "They do not grow in this part of the country, and they are so exotic and expensive. If you could bring me a single rose in any color, that would be lovely." He chuckled at the strange whims of his youngest, but he readily agreed. Privately, he thought he would also bring her a necklace or some sort of bauble. "Go with the flower." The weather was fine on the morning of his departure. Camille took care, packed his saddlebag with provisions for his journey, and she wished him farewell with a somewhat tearful smile. The others were more cavalier. They were used to their father's troubles. They cared only for the gifts they could now expect upon his return. As he rode away down the sun-dappled forest path, Camille alone waited in front of the cottage until he disappeared. She had a strange feeling of misgiving, but she didn't want to speak up. After all, their fortunes had obviously taken a turn for the better. While Laurent's children waited at the cottage, he steadily made his way to the port city, filled with anticipation of reclaiming his wealth and status. It was true, of course, that he had still suffered heavy losses. However, with the cargo in this ship, he could seed a new business, perhaps building up to a new fleet of ships. Silks and other goods he might import in the future. It was devastating to him, therefore, to arrive and find his dreams dashed. It was true, his ship had reappeared, with most of its cargo unharmed. However, word had spread quickly of his good fortune, and his many creditors had taken swift action, By the time Laurent had come to claim his property, it had already been distributed to pay his many debts. In vain, he contacted one merchant after another, asking for an extension on his considerable bills. But it was no use. He was a man without debts, but he was empty-handed. There was no money left for him to invest, and there was certainly no money to spend on the gifts he had promised to his family. He was so disheartened, he didn't even want to stay in the city overnight. Without properly provisioning himself, considering the weather, or sending any correspondence ahead of him, Laurent mounted his tired horse again and rode out of town, heading back down the provincial road that had brought him to the port that morning. Laurent was a few hours outside of the city when darkness fell and a storm descended. Lightning and thunder crashed all around him, and the wind gusted mercilessly, blowing limbs off the trees. Laurent's horse became frightened and bolted away from the main road, taking him into an unfamiliar forest, realizing too late that he had been foolish to undertake this nighttime journey. Laurent began searching in the gusting wind for any sort of shelter, such as a cave. How long his horse wandered through the howling gale, he did not know. Finally, he saw a tall stone wall arise before him. He urged the horse onward, hoping he had reached a house where he might shelter. Arriving at the forbidding wall of rock, he saw that it was not a house. It was the wall around an estate, tall and imposing iron gate, stood ever so slightly open, having no time for good manners. Laurent dismounted and pushed the heavy swinging gate wide enough to pull his horse through. Together, they slowly headed up a paved walkway that receded ahead of them into the swirling darkness, with leaves flying all around and rain pelting him from all sides. Laurent could barely see the massive structure that emerged ahead of him in the wicked gloom. It was a mansion, to be sure. Although his visibility was limited, he could see it had a grand approach and many large rooms with tall windows. It was a very intimidating place for a person to arrive uninvited, but he had no choice. He feared he could not survive the night without a roof over his head. Tying his horse up safely in a sheltered alcove, he walked to the massive front door and lifted the iron door knocker. He let it fall, hearing the sound echo through the gloom, as if in response to the thunder. When there was no answer, he took a deep breath, pushed the door inward with all his weight. It gave, and he found himself almost falling onto the floor of a grand entryway. Laurent lay on the cold flagstones for a moment, regaining his breath in the eerie stillness. He could still hear the rain lashing the front steps through the crack in the tall door, and thought to himself how glad he was that he'd found shelter for his horse. rising in the semi-darkness, he peered about him. He was in a grand reception area, with a curved staircase ascending on either side. Suits of armor stood sentinel here and there. Ahead of him, there was a set of richly carved double doors. The silence inside the house was profound. He could have heard a pin drop, but there was a light glowing around the cracks of the doors in front of him. After a few half-hearted efforts to call out to the occupants, he took another deep breath and walked toward the lighted room, pushing the doors slowly open. He leaned inside and scanned the room. Fire was roaring in the cavernous hearth. Front of it, a table was set for one, with a few simple dishes, a carafe, and a large drinking glass spread across it. His gaze took in the other aspects of the comfortable room. He saw upholstered chairs and tables carelessly stacked with books. Still, there was no sign of the owner. Laurent awkwardly sat down on one of the armchairs and waited for a few moments. Soon, he could not take his eyes from the simple dinner laid upon the table. The loaf of bread and the aroma of the roasted meat tormented him, and his stomach growled loudly. As minutes passed and nobody appeared, he soon gave in to his hunger and seated himself at the table, first taking just a slice of bread, and then slowly eating the entire meal. He passed an hour in contented silence. Perhaps, he thought, the owner was away from home and sheltering from the storm elsewhere. Taking a deep drink of the delicious liquid in the glass, he hungrily polished off the rest of the dinner. Yes, he told himself, the owner was away, and he would be able to explain himself in the morning. Upon finishing all the food, Laurent leaned happily in his chair and drank the rest of the contents of the carafe. The fire danced before his eyes, crackling and popping with a comforting warmth, draining the last drop from his large cup. He pulled the letter about his recovered cargo ship from his pocket. Just a short time ago, he had been so full of hope. Now, those dreams were gone again. He dropped the letter on the table and pushed it away. Without even realizing it, Blanc fell into a deep sleep. He slumbered through the night without dreaming. When he awoke in the morning, it took him a moment to remember where he was. The fire had long ago burned down, and the plates and glasses he'd used the night before were still on the table. It appeared that his host had not yet returned home. Feeling sheepish that he'd entered a stranger's home without invitation, his embarrassment got the better of him. Rather than wait for the return of the owner, Laurent resolved to slip out of the house as quietly as possible and be on his way. After all, he told himself, the dinner would obviously have gone to waste anyhow. Raising himself from the upholstered chair, Laurent moved across the chamber and pulled the double doors open. The morning light filtered weakly into the entryway, illuminating the austere hallway, so that he could see it much better than the night before. Stepping self-consciously into the foyer, he found himself tiptoeing between the vigilant suits of armor, as if they might come to life any moment and bar his path. Peering around him at the twin curving staircases, he noted that their carpet runners appeared neglected and fusty. It was as if nobody had been living here for some time. He walked lightly across the flagstones to the enormous front door. He reached for the handles and pulled with all his might. It slowly slid open again, revealing a misty courtyard outside, squeezing himself through the crack and then pushing it shut behind him. He straightened his waistcoat, attempted to muster some dignity, escaping his forbidding refuge like a thief in the night felt wrong. But he would try to put this entire humiliating journey behind him. Making haste, he returned to the alcove where he'd left his horse tethered the night before. He was glad to find her well. He reached into his saddlebag to feed her an apple he had left over from the supplies Camille had packed for him. Then, untying the horse, he quietly led her down the stone path he had traveled in the whipping wind the night before. Looking behind him, he saw the mansion rising darkly into the growing daylight. It was an enormous chateau, long, beige, and rectangular. The building had a main center section and was flanked by identical wings on either side. The windows were tall and narrow, lining all the 2 large floors with a regimented appearance. They seemed to be staring down at him. The sloping, tiled roof was thickly populated with chimneys. Turning away from the sight of the imposing chateau, he led the horse toward the front gate, taking in the overgrown gardens on either side of him. As he was nearing the end of the walkway, he spotted a particularly charming pergola that was overrun with rose bushes. Standing in the center of a round seating area was a rose bush blooming, with the most stunning pink roses he'd ever seen. Once, he remembered his promise to Camille. Resolving to keep his word to his youngest daughter, he eagerly set to cutting blushing roses from the bush with a knife he kept in his bag. One rose would not be enough to make up for the circumstances of his reappearance. He would take them all. Blanc was so absorbed by his task that he didn't hear footsteps approaching. However, as he backed away from the rosebush, now devoid of all its blossoms, he sensed he was being watched. Turning, he saw a tall, fierce-looking man glowering down at him. Or at least, he thought it was a man. The being who stood before him resembled a human, but he was bristling from beneath a wilderness of facial hair, and he had an abnormally tall and muscular build. Obviously not prepared for company, he was wearing a wrinkled linen shirt and breeches. As if he had stormed over in a hurry, he appeared to be furious. "What do you think you are doing?" he said in a loud growl, like that of a wolf. Laurent froze, painfully aware of the bouquet hanging from his left hand. He stammered an apology, explaining that he had believed the place to be deserted and thought the roses would not be missed. Then, seeing no softening in the stranger's grim expression, he added in a trembling voice that the flowers were meant for his daughter. The man in the linen shirt regarded him in heavy silence, weighing his words like stones. At last, he straightened to his full height and spoke. "You helped yourself to my table and my fire without asking. You dined on my food. You slept beneath my roof. All of this I was prepared to forgive. But now you have stripped every blossom from my most cherished rose bush, the only one of its kind, and precious beyond price. You will repay me for this." Laurent's heart sank. He spread his empty hands. "I have nothing," he whispered. The man's cold eyes did not waver. "Then you shall work to settle the debt," he said. "I need laborers here." Laurent's throat tightened. "Sir, I have 6 children at home. They depend on me. I cannot stay." The stranger's tone remained unchanged. "If you do not serve me, one of your family must take your place. Go now. Keep your roses. They mean nothing to me anymore. You have 1 week. If no one returns, I will come for you myself." With that, the fierce figure turned sharply and strode back toward the house, never once looking over his shoulder. Laurent watched until the door closed behind him, then gathered his courage and set out for home. Somehow, he would have to tell his children what had happened. Perhaps, he told himself, the man's anger would fade in time. Perhaps his service would not last long. The storm had passed, and daylight guided his path back to the main road. He rode slowly, lost in thought. By the time he reached his village, the mist had lifted, and the first autumn sun spilled its honeyed light across the fields. Birds sang as though the world were untroubled, yet his heart felt heavy as lead. That night, his children rushed to meet him, laughing and eager for the promised gifts. They rummaged playfully through his saddlebags, but he could only hand each of them a single rose. Camille raised hers to her face and smiled, enchanted by its beauty, while her brothers and sisters demanded to know where their real presents were. So, around the humble kitchen table, Laurent told them everything: the failed voyage, the lost fortune, and the terrible debt owed to the master of the mysterious chateau. When he finished, silence fell. The 5 older children protested bitterly. How were they to manage without him? Only Camille remained quiet. She sat with her hands folded, her gaze distant. Then she lifted her head. "I will go," she said softly. Her brothers and sisters stared. Even Laurent could only blink at her in disbelief. She spoke again, calm and clear. "Father must stay to care for the family. I can take his place. I know how to cook and clean. It is the only sensible choice." Laurent's eyes filled with tears. He tried to refuse, but her reasoning was sound, and her resolve unshakable. Within 2 days, she had packed her few belongings. The rose he had brought her was fading, so she pressed it carefully inside a book, a keepsake, a reminder of why she was leaving. Though her heart quivered with fear, she was determined to make her father proud. The morning of her departure dawned bright and still. Together, she and Laurent loaded her small chest onto their faithful mare's cart. The chateau lay 2 days away, and he knew of an inn where they might rest. Her siblings stood before the cottage, watching with mixed emotions: relief, guilt, and quiet admiration. The first day passed peacefully beneath a soft blue sky. The second dawned gray and restless, autumn winds chasing brown leaves along the road. The closer they drew to their destination, the heavier Laurent's heart grew. Sensing his sorrow, Camille touched his arm and smiled. "Do not worry, Father," she said gently. "I will be all right." He nodded, unable to answer. By the time they reached the great iron gates of the estate, the sky had turned leaden. Laurent pushed them open and led the horse up the path. Camille gazed at the chateau, its towering walls, its tangled gardens, and felt both awe and unease. The very stones seemed to breathe with age, as though waiting for her arrival. When they stopped before the grand steps, the wind pressed against them like an unseen warning. Laurent climbed first and struck the heavy door knocker. For a long moment, there was only the moan of the wind. Then, to their surprise, the door opened, not to reveal the fearsome master, but a boy of about 13. He peered out with frank curiosity. "Are you the new servant?" he asked. Laurent hesitated, then explained that his daughter had come to work off his debt. The boy nodded, as if this were expected, and gestured for Camille to enter. "You may leave her things here," he told Laurent, before vanishing into the dim hallways. Camille stepped inside. The air was cool and faintly perfumed with roses long past their bloom. Behind her, Laurent stood a moment longer, memorizing her face. Then, with a heavy heart, he turned away. The horse clopped slowly down the drive, and the forest swallowed them from sight. Camille remained in the shadowed foyer, the pale light filtering through tall windows high above. It was quiet, so quiet she could hear the echo of her own breath. She hugged her small trunk close, and though a shiver passed through her, she lifted her chin. Her new life had begun. She reminded herself that she must summon her courage and do her very best. A few minutes later, the boy came scampering back into the hall, his voice bright and eager as he announced that the Baron had ordered him to escort her to her room. With cheerful energy, he hoisted her trunk and began climbing the wide, spiraling staircase. Camille followed, surprised to find herself going up instead of down. Surely, she had expected a modest room below stairs near the kitchen. Perhaps, she thought, they've put me in the attic. But instead, the boy turned down the first grand hallway, his footsteps soft upon the thick carpet of the east wing. The portraits of long dead nobles gazed down from their gilded frames, eyes following her with silent suspicion, as if she were some intruder disturbing their eternal vigil. She was so lost in their painted stares that she nearly walked into the boy when he stopped before a tall door and pushed it open. Camille stepped inside and caught her breath. The chamber before her was the loveliest she had ever seen. Not vast, but richly appointed. A canopied bed dressed in fine fabrics, furniture of polished wood, a small dressing table, and a window seat draped in velvet. While she stood taking it all in, the boy knelt before the hearth and coaxed a fire to life. When the flames danced merrily, he stood, dusted off his hands, and grinned. "I'm Gabriel," he said. "I help the Baron with all sorts of things. I'm glad you've come. It gets lonely here sometimes, and there's always plenty to do." Camille thanked him for the fire, though she wondered what plenty to do might mean. She asked when she would meet her employer. Gabriel replied that the Baron would see her the next day and explain her duties then. For tonight, he would bring her a simple supper and hoped she would rest well. With that, he vanished as quietly as he'd arrived. Left alone, Camille unpacked her few possessions. She hung her dresses in the wardrobe and placed her small stack of books upon the bedside table. When she opened the one on top, a pressed pink rose slipped into view. She smiled faintly, then closed it again and set it aside. Drawing back the heavy drapes, she curled into the window seat. From there, she could see the courtyard below, where unkempt gardens climbed the old stone walls. Twilight had fallen. The wind stirred dry leaves into little whirls, and clouds hurried past the rising moon. Drowsiness overtook her, and she drifted into sleep, wrapped in the curtain's embrace. A gentle knock woke her. she slipped from the window seat and opened the door. A tray rested outside. Bread, cheese, soup, and steaming tea. But no sign of Gabriel. Smiling, she carried it in, ate every crumb, and, too weary to change, slipped into bed. Within a minute, she was asleep. That night, strange dreams came. She wandered through endless corridors, following a great hound that padded silently ahead. The creature vanished into one room after another, always reappearing farther on. At last, she followed it through a doorway, only to see, instead of the dog, a man seated at a desk. As he turned toward her, she awoke, sitting upright in bed. The fire was cold, and sunlight streamed through the window. A knock sounded. Gabriel stood outside, smiling, a tray in his hands. "Good morning, Miss Camille," he said. "Breakfast for you. The Baron asks that you meet him in his study when you're ready." An hour later, Camille stood before the study door, the very room where her father had once dined beside a stolen fire. She heard the rustle of papers, cleared her throat, and knocked softly. The noises ceased. A chair scraped, and then the door opened. A massive man with a forest of beard filled the doorway. His features were harsh, his brow heavy, his expression severe. Camille dipped her head politely, careful not to show her fear. The Baron studied her a moment, then motioned toward a chair by the fire. "So," he said, lowering himself opposite her, "you're here to repay your father's debt. Are you skilled in household work? Cleaning, cooking, that sort of thing?" Camille nodded. The Baron seemed satisfied. He lifted a ring of iron keys from the table. "I'm short on help. Gabriel handles errands and brings supplies from the village, but there's no one else to manage this estate. Too much for 2 people, but we shall manage." Camille said nothing, though her heart sank at the thought. "These keys will open most doors," he continued. "If you require anything Gabriel cannot provide, speak to me directly. I prefer that you handle daily matters as you see fit. I spend most of my time here or in the library." Camille nodded again, understanding that the conversation was over. She took the ancient keys and turned to go. "Dinner is at 7, he called after her. "Join me in the dining room." She murmured her thanks and stepped into the great hall, the heavy keys lying across her open palm. They gleamed dully in the morning light, mysterious, powerful, like the house itself. Just then, Gabriel appeared from a shadowed archway, smiling. "Would you like a tour?" he asked. Camille smiled back with relief. "Yes, please." And so her life at the chateau began. She soon learned that the Baron lived entirely alone. The villagers feared him for his grim countenance and whispered cruel tales behind his back. Only Gabriel kept him connected to the world beyond these walls. Once merely an errand boy, Gabriel had grown fond of the man few dared approach. "His bark's worse than his bite," he told her cheerfully. The boy led her through endless corridors, their grandeur dulled by neglect. Most rooms were sealed beneath sheets and cobwebs. The air smelled of dust and forgotten time. Some doors opened to chambers unused for a century, their windows dim with grime. Only a handful of rooms were still alive. The kitchen, the study, the front hall. And then there was the library. When Gabriel let her peek inside, while the Baron was elsewhere, Camille's breath caught in wonder. A vast room opened before her, its ceiling high and gilded, its walls lined with shelves that reached the heavens. She felt, in that moment, as though she had stepped into the heart of a dream. Bookshelves climbed to the ceiling like ancient trees, covering every wall except where a tall window let in a faint wash of light. Sliding ladders rested at each end of the room, waiting to glide across the rails and offer passage to any book the visitor desired. There were volumes beyond counting, spines of crimson, forest green, and deep sea blue, with gold letters that caught the firelight and shimmered invitingly. Camille had always loved the few worn books she owned during her father's misfortune, yet nothing in her imagination had ever resembled this boundless library. Gabriel had told her that the Baron spent most of his hours here, and the rumor seemed true. Tables overflowed with open tomes, pages marked with ribbons, clusters of manuscripts left mid-thought. 2 old leather armchairs hinted at evenings spent turning heavy pages by the fire. Gabriel, solemn as ever, reminded her that the hearth must never go cold. Camille imagined curling up in one of those chairs, opening a forgotten volume, and breathing in the perfume of time-stained paper and ink, a fragrance that spoke of mystery and memory. Determined to bring life back to the neglected mansion, she chose a starting place and began. That first day, she and Gabriel dusted the great hall and aired the kitchen, which had served the Baron and his servant for years with little care. Camille was no expert cook, but restoring that room filled her with quiet pride. She sent Gabriel to town for supplies, and alone beneath the cavernous ceiling, set to work, polishing copper pots, wiping the stone counters, coaxing warmth into the cold space until it began to feel like a living heart again. By dusk, a simple roast chicken waited on the table. It was plain fare, but she was pleased with it. After freshening herself in her room, where Gabriel had kindled a welcoming fire, she changed into her best dress. At the window, she paused. The courtyard below lay utterly still, wrapped in silence so deep it seemed enchanted. Not a bird stirred, not a leaf whispered. Drawing the velvet curtains, she felt a curious thrill. There was something hidden in this place, something waiting to be understood. With a candle in hand, she descended the darkening staircase toward the dining room. The hall was vast for only 2 diners, though it had surely once glittered with laughter and candlelight. A crystal chandelier hovered overhead like a frozen constellation. Gabriel had set 2 places at the end of the long table. When the Baron entered, tall, awkward, shadowed, he nodded curtly and motioned for her to sit. "I see you and Gabriel have been busy," he remarked, glancing at the modest meal. "He has carried more than his share these years. I'm grateful you've come to help him." Camille inclined her head, unsure how to reply. "My lord," she began, but he stopped her gently. "Please," he said, "call me Antoine. I'm lord of nothing now, only of this chateau and its ghosts." A wry smile crossed his face, then faded. "I'm sorry you were brought here as you were, but I hope you will find some comfort. I try to be fair, and I welcome the company." Encouraged, she asked if she might tidy the library the next day. He considered and nodded. "Yes, and take any book you wish. Descartes once said that reading good books is like conversing with the greatest minds of centuries past. You may find that my library answers nearly any curiosity. It has a peculiar magic that way." Surprised by his warmth, Camille studied him in the flicker of candlelight. Perhaps this strange exile was not the monster gossip had described. Perhaps fortune had led her to something unexpected. They dined mostly in silence, silverware chiming softly against porcelain. Later, wrapped in crisp white sheets beneath her canopied bed, Camille felt, for the first time in years, hope. The house was old and lonely, but alive with secrets waiting to be found. The next morning, after cleaning the kitchen, she slipped quietly into the library while the Baron worked elsewhere. Feather duster in hand, she moved among the towering shelves, brushing away years of neglect. But as she reached for a stack of books, Antoine appeared in the doorway. "Please," he said, "don't move the piles, or open what's left open." Startled, she stepped back and apologized. "No harm done," he said kindly. "It looks untidy, I know, but I'm in the middle of some research." Then, softening, he asked if she had chosen a book for herself. She confessed she hadn't, uncertain where to begin. "The awareness of ignorance," he told her with a smile, "is the beginning of wisdom. Her puzzled expression made him chuckle. "Socrates said that?" he added, handing her a small volume from a lower shelf. "Perhaps you'll enjoy hearing more of his thoughts." He believed in asking many questions. She thanked him and turned to go, but paused. "May I ask one more? Would it be possible to hire some villagers to clear the gardens before winter?" Antoine's expression darkened. "If anyone dares. Most keep their distance. Too many stories have been told about me over the years." Camille frowned. "Doesn't that make you angry? To be judged so cruelly?" He looked down at his hands. "Once, I was vain and foolish. Misfortune has its uses. It teaches. Perhaps their scorn is the price I must pay." She said no more, but inside she resolved to learn the truth behind his sorrow. That evening, she began reading Socrates by lamplight, his words whispering through the quiet room. In time, she grew fond of her life at the chateau. With gentle persuasion and a few coins of encouragement, she convinced Gabriel to bring some men from the village to tend the long-abandoned gardens, instructing them carefully not to harm the rose bush by the pergola, planted long ago by Antoine's mother. But when she overheard the men sneering, calling the Baron a beast, a recluse unfit for decent company, Camille's heart tightened. Looking up, she saw Antoine standing by the window, the hurt plain on his face. She hurried to close it, hoping the sound of cruelty might not linger in his ears. He waved her off with a faint smile, apparently untroubled. "I've grown used to words like that," he said softly. "It's been many years since I moved among people." But Camille's brow furrowed. "How can you bear such cruelty from those who don't even know you? How can you not despise them?" He only shrugged, his eyes drifting toward a tower of books nearby. "An English poet once wrote," he murmured, "Heat not a furnace for your foe so hot that it do singe yourself. By choosing goodwill over anger, I make peace within my own heart." Then he smiled at her with a trace of warmth. "You might like Shakespeare, too. He wrote splendid things." With that, he returned to his reading, leaving Camille to ponder his words and the gray drizzle beyond the window panes. Though her days were filled with endless chores, Camille still found moments to explore the old chateau. When autumn arrived, sharp mornings, early dusks, and evenings kissed with frost, she roamed the echoing corridors by candlelight, her ring of heavy keys clinking softly as she tried door after door. Most rooms had long been guest chambers, their elegance slumbering beneath white dust sheets. In each darkened space, she found canopied beds, carved furniture, and silken chairs dulled by time. One afternoon, she unlocked a chamber unlike the rest, It had once belonged to a lady of grace, and the air still carried the faint perfume of her life. A dressing table shimmered with crystal bottles and silver brushes, and on nearby stands sat ornate wigs, waiting like ghostly companions for a vanished ball. When Camille opened the wardrobe, she drew in her breath. Inside hung gowns of silk and lace, fashions from the days before the Revolution. She touched them gently, fearing they might crumble beneath her fingertips. She imagined the woman who had worn them, her laughter, her mirror, her jewels. In a drawer lay necklaces and rings, one with a sapphire that winked like a captured star. Camille closed the box with care and slipped from the room, locking it behind her. It felt like stepping out of another century, a portal to a happier world. She continued writing letters to her father, which Gabriel carried into town. In them, she told him she was well treated and content. And after her first month, she even sent a few coins home. The Baron had insisted on paying her, saying the debt of the rosebush was long repaid. He hoped she would remain. And from then on, Camille received a modest weekly wage. She accepted gladly. The role of housekeeper suited her. Her gift for order brought the place to life, and the Baron's company and his remarkable library became her quiet joy. In time, she almost forgot that Antoine was thought monstrous. Nothing about his form had changed, except that she kept his clothes neat and dignified. Yet sometimes, as he passed a mirror, she glimpsed another face reflected there, a kind, ordinary man. She would blink, and the illusion would vanish, leaving the same furred, sorrowful countenance. Perhaps, she mused, the chateau's strange magic was at work upon her mind. Now and then, a beggar would appear at the door, the winter wind clawing at his rags. Camille expected Antoine to drive them away, for that was what her own village had always done. But he would instead ask her to feed them, to give them a few coins for the road. When she asked him why, he answered gently, "A philosopher named Aristotle once said, 'The magnanimous man seeks no favors, but is ever ready to show kindness.'" Then, after a pause, he added quietly, "I must learn to be such a man. My former life led me to ruin." She longed to ask more, yet his eyes had gone distant. That evening, over stew and candlelight, Camille found her courage. "Monsieur," she asked, "how did you come to live here all alone?" Antoine sighed and leaned back, the flame glinting off his glass. "Many years ago, I lived here with my mother," he began. "My father had died young, leaving me lord of this estate. My mother was radiant, gracious to everyone, full of laughter. It was her rosebush your father cut." He paused, sorrow shadowing his face. When she fell ill and passed away, I was left to my own reckless ways. I squandered our fortune on luxuries and feasts. I neglected my servants and the land. Without her guidance, I became vain, careless, worthless even to myself. His voice dropped to a whisper. One night, while I was hosting a lavish party, a servant came to say that a poor woman stood at the door begging for food. I told him to send her away, to tell her to find work. But before he could, she stepped into the hall and said that I was cursed by my own foolish pride. She had pronounced a curse upon me, that I would live my days shunned and unloved, and that only through humanity could I find release. At this, Camille frowned slightly. Humanity? She murmured. What could she have meant? Antoine sighed, his eyes distant. That, he said softly, is the riddle I have wrestled with for decades. My library is endless, shelves of philosophers, mathematicians, and poets. The greatest minds our kind has ever produced. Their brilliance lies open before me, perhaps as part of this strange enchantment. And though I have learned much, none of their wisdom has yet freed me from my fate. Camille watched him from across the table. The fire crackled quietly, filling the silence between them. She could almost see him, night after night, sitting before that same hearth. The flames, his only company. How many winters had he endured like this, alone among his books, searching every page for forgiveness? Antoine, sensing the weight of her pity, smiled faintly. "Ah, well," he said with forced cheer, as the excellent Isaac Newton once remarked, to reach the simplest truth often requires years of contemplation. Perhaps one day I shall find it. That night, curled beneath her blanket, Camille felt as though she finally understood. For all these years, Antoine had studied, reflected, repented. He was no longer the man who had once turned away from compassion. Yet she wondered, what more could he do? Was he to remain forever among these walls, surrounded by his books and the ghosts of the man he used to be? She hoped not, because, to her own quiet surprise, she had come to care deeply for him. Pulling the covers up to her chin, she watched the fire's last glow fade into darkness and drifted into sleep. Winter passed in crystal silence. The days were slow but peaceful. Camille, Antoine, and Gabrielle lived quietly within the grand old chateau, their world warmed by laughter and the glow of the hearth. Most of the rooms stayed locked and cold, but the few they used were neat and cozy, under Camille's diligent care. Their meals were simple, their companionship easy. Outside, snow piled high against the gates, and the wind moaned through empty halls. But inside, there was warmth. When spring finally returned, so did a letter from Camille's father. Her eldest sister was soon to be wed, he wrote, and he asked whether the Baron might allow her to come home for the celebration. Laurent would gladly fetch her if granted permission. Antoine set down his book and smiled sadly. "Of course," he said, "you must go. Take all the time you need." She thanked him, and for a fleeting instant, she no longer saw a beast before her. She saw only a man, weary, kind, and deeply human. She blinked, trying to chase away the illusion, then quietly left the room. Her journey home was uneventful. Her family greeted her with curiosity and a touch of pride. They admired her refined clothes, the result of her hard work and modest pay. The money she had sent had clearly improved their fortunes. Once pitied as poor, they were now seen by their neighbors as respectable. Yet Camille herself felt strangely out of place. Though she had been confined to the chateau, her world had grown wider. Sitting again by her family's hearth, listening to their familiar chatter about small worries, she felt the air of the cottage closing in. When she parted from her father at Antoine's gate days later, she felt both sadness and relief. She was ready to return home, to that home. But her joy faltered when she saw what awaited her. Gabriel opened the door, delighted but anxious. "Nothing has been right since you left," he whispered. "The Baron has scarcely left his library." Camille went straight there. The room was in chaos. Books piled high, papers scattered, half-empty glasses everywhere. Antoine sat slumped in an armchair, unshaven and lost in thought. When she entered, he looked up, embarrassment flickering across his face. For a moment, she forgot the curse. She saw only a man, lonely, disheveled, but unmistakably human. Then the illusion slipped, and the truth returned. Still, she smiled. It took only a few days for order to return. Dust vanished. The fires burned bright again, and Antoine's spirit lifted at once. Gabriel confided to her in secret that he hoped she would never leave again. The Baron had fallen into dreadful melancholy in her absence, barely remembering to eat. And yet, with spring in full bloom, sadness could not last. The gardens Camille had ordered, cleared before winter, now burst with color. Flowers unfurled like painted ribbons, and the air filled with birdsong. Antoine took to reading outdoors beneath the pergola, and often let Gabriel leave early to meet his friends. Camille threw open the windows of the chateau, letting sunlight and fresh air sweep through its long, slumbering halls. By the time summer neared, another letter came. Her second sister was to be married. Camille was torn between duty and affection. She longed to attend the wedding, but could not bear to leave Antoine again. At last, she made a daring suggestion. "Come with me," she said. "Stay nearby, at an inn. No one there knows you." Antoine's eyes widened. "Have you forgotten how people react to me?" "I haven't," Camille replied gently. "But these are my people. They have never seen you. They will have no reason to fear you." In truth, she no longer feared him herself. To her, he was neither beast nor baron, but simply Antoine, the man she had come to trust. He resisted. He refused, but when she quietly told him that she would not go without him, he sighed, defeated. "Very well," he said. Still, a shadow crossed his face. He dreaded it. Camille, however, was determined. She sent Gabrielle into town to commission a new suit, finely tailored, clean, and modern. The ornate old garments Antoine still wore belonged to another age, another man. Soon, he would have a simple, dignified attire worthy of who he had become. Rooms were booked, the carriage made ready, and thus began a journey neither of them would ever forget. At last, the day arrived when Gabriel wished the pair a safe and happy journey. He had never once seen the Baron leave his estate, and the moment felt quietly momentous. With a steady voice, Gabriel promised to keep the household in good order until their return. The carriage rolled swiftly toward Camille's village, covering the distance in a single day. A fine summer day, when the world seemed bright with promise. The forest road dappled with sunlight. Birds caroled above them in the green canopy, and the horses' hooves made a rhythmic song upon the path. At first, Antoine sat in silence, as though resisting the reality of being seen beside Camille in public. Yet after a few miles, conversation blossomed, first about a book she had been reading, and soon the lively exchange that had always come so naturally between them returned. Camille smiled quietly, watching the best side of him unfold, glancing at him from the corner of her eye. She could almost believe she was riding with a charming stranger, rather than the man everyone whispered about. Content with that thought, she let the illusion linger. By dusk, their journey ended. Crickets had begun their nightly serenade as the carriage stopped before her family's cottage. They had scarcely stepped down before her 4 unmarried siblings burst through the door, gaping in open curiosity. Laurent, ever the most composed, stepped forward to thank the Baron politely for escorting his sister. But Camille's cheeks burned when one of her brothers murmured something crude that made her sister laugh aloud. The mockery was plain to all. When Antoine withdrew to his lodgings, Camille allowed herself to be guided indoors, spending the evening answering polite questions about the coming wedding. Yet her thoughts drifted toward the inn. She worried that Antoine might be enduring unkind stares, or worse, that night, as she lay in bed, thoughts of him filled her heart. She realized she would be glad when the wedding was over, and they could return to the chateau, which had somehow begun to feel like home. The next morning, Antoine's grim expression at the church confirmed her fears. They sat through the ceremony in uneasy silence, aware of every glance turned their way. The tiny church felt smaller than ever, heavy with whispers. Later, on the village green, the celebration carried a gentle cheer, cakes and punch, wild flowers, and children tumbling over the grass. But for Camille and Antoine, joy was distant. She stood beside him, nodding stiffly to villagers who once had been her friends. The people who had taught her to bake and garden now lingered apart, whispering behind their hands. No one offered the Baron a kind word. He only smiled faintly and said nothing. Her own family ignored them entirely. Then came the cruelest moment. Two men nearby laughed together. "He may have gold," one said, "but no woman would marry a face like that." The other chuckled. "It's a poor world when a master must court his maid." Camille's patience snapped. Setting her glass aside, she stepped to the center of the crowd. Her voice, though calm, carried clearly over the noise. "I asked the Baron to come because I believed you were good people," she said. "I thought his generosity and kindness would show you that he is not the monster you imagine. I was wrong. Not one of you is worthy of his notice. Antoine is a better man than any here. I would choose him 100 times over." A stunned silence followed. Every gaze turned from her to the Baron, and in that instant, the strangest thing occurred. Where the disfigured man had stood, there now was one of noble bearing and striking grace. No matter how many times Camille blinked, the vision did not change. The coarse features were gone. The beast was no more. Whether enchantment or simple revelation, she could not tell. But the villagers seemed to notice nothing unusual. They greeted Antoine warmly, smiled at Camille, and continued their merriment as though the miracle had always been. Thus, in quiet triumph, Antoine was freed from his long-endured curse. All his years of solitude and study, his slow growth in gentleness and patience, had shaped the heart that won Camille's love. And it was love, at last, that completed his redemption. Not long after, they sat together beneath the garden pergola, watching the roses bloom again. Twilight settled softly over the chateau, while crickets sang in the grass. Camille admired this new, glad Antoine, his once hidden beauty now shining plainly. He reached into his pocket and drew out the blue jeweled ring she had once admired on his mother's dresser. "You were the only one who cared to know me as I truly was," he said gently. Then, smiling, he added, "As Copernicus said, at the center of everything stands the sun. And you, my dear, have become that sun to me." Camille laughed, tears bright in her eyes, and allowed him to place the ring upon her finger. Before the summer's end, they wed in the courtyard, surrounded by fragrant roses and birdsong. As she stood beside him, beneath the shadow of the house, Camille felt a deep and grateful peace. The lonely chateau had become a home. Through kindness, patience, and love, they had found both wisdom and happiness everlasting.